Good morning. Good morning. So great to see everyone. Really warms my heart. And welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of South County. We're all so happy to be here and to see each other. We are a welcoming congregation comprised of people of different diversities, ethnicities, and faith traditions. We welcome our diversity in all its form. Is there anyone here who is new to UUCSC and wishes to stand and let us welcome you? Is there anyone? All right, well then I'll have to just say welcome in toto. So I want to start with announcements. And where are my announcements? My notes. Here we go. So first, here's an announcement from Martina that there's, some of you may know about the bus trip to protest in Washington, D.C. This is sponsored by the Poor People's Campaign regarding Congress, which is about to approve the yearly National Defense Authorization Act, basically spending over 50% of its discretionary budget on the war economy and militarism. So the bus is leaving, and I'm not sure where or how. Maybe Martina, you want to speak to this. December 13th, which is a Monday at midnight, and returns 24 hours later. So you get to sleep on the ride, go and talk to people in Congress, and get chauffeured back home. What a bargain. I don't know, I would say if you're interested, maybe Google Poor People's Campaign. Martina, where are you? Is that, what would you say?
Yeah, and I can direct you to resources. I didn't want to make the announcement too long, so I didn't put all the details in.
Of course I can hear you.
Just get in touch with me and I can give you all the details or direct you to people who have the details.
So our regular housekeeping, we have 4 emergency exits, one here, one in the back, the rear door on the right that none of you came in on, and this door here through the Oneida room, and this is the door that has a ramp. We have 2 bathrooms. If you go down this hallway, first door to your right is a woman's bathroom, then there's a gender-neutral bathroom, a single-use bathroom on the left, the second door on the left. Please make sure cell phones and other exciting electrical devices are turned off. And today we are going to have a Hanukkah celebration. And there'll be a few words that you don't know. And so, basically, you don't have to really absorb a lot of the translation, because really it's about the spirit. So the words that I'm going to start with, you may want to know that latkes are, especially for the children, are potato pancakes that you eat. That the menorah that we're going to light and say blessings is the candelabra there. And what else? The dreidel is the spinning top. If you can't hear me, if you can't hear any of us speaking or singing, please raise your hands. And I just want to say that part of our celebration is that today we're going to welcome Rev Denis Paul, our new minister, and I'll introduce him. Turn around, look. And I'm so excited. All right, I'm going to begin. Oh Hanukkah, light the menorah. Let's have a party. We'll all dance the hora. Gather around the table. We'll give you a treat. Dreidels to play with, and latkes to eat. And while we are playing, the candles are burning low. One for each night, they shed a sweet light to remind us of days long ago. Oh, one for each night, they shed a sweet light to remind us of days long ago.
And you should feel free to clap. We want it to be lebendig. That's Yiddish. It means like full of spirit. So you're going to be like, what speed are we going at? Noise. Good. So you can clap when I'm hitting the ukulele. It's like boom, clap, clap, clap. Thank you, Luke.
And in that spirit, we light the chalice. If you want to read as a statement with me, please feel free. We light this chalice to consciously connect our congregation with the eternal light that shines through us all. And if you feel like standing for the covenant statement, love is the spirit of its congregation, and service is its prayer. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. So, Hanukkah. There are a couple of aspects of Hanukkah. There's the candles, which stand for the miracle of burning oil. There's the story of Hanukkah. Maybe I'll start there. So Hanukkah is a celebration of a battle victory. And these were battles that were fought around 165 BCE. And a scruffy band of people, probably all men, fought off the Greeks. Actually, these were Hellenized people throughout that whole era of Palestine. And the battle was fought, and this battle regained the Temple Mount. It was not a battle that redeemed the whole land, but this was the battle that regained the temple. The Hebrew people at that time were a temple cult. This was at the time of the Second Temple. And so after the temple was cleansed, the story goes, though this story only got added years and years later, maybe like 400 AD or CE in the Common Era. So the story was added that the candles, there was only enough sanctified oil in the temple, and instead of lasting only one day, it lasted 8 days. So we light the candles, and there are 3 Hanukkah blessings for the candles. First of all the blessings praise God. Judaism is a devotional path, and that's the language that's always used. So the first blessing praises God for commanding us to light the Hanukkah lights. I like the wording, praising God for making us holy through the lighting of the candle lights. And the feeling that one can get, this being made holy, to me is what matters in that blessing. The second blessing thanks God for the great miracle that happened there, referring to the battle. And the third blessing, which is the best, is called the Shehechianu. And the Shehechianu V'Kiyamanu V'Higianu, thanks God for creating us and sustaining us and preserving us to reach this time. So it's a blessing of being in the moment. And we are in a Shehechianu moment. We have a new minister. It's a blessing. So I'm going to sing this for you. Ay, ay, ay. Ay, ay, ay. And so don't worry about the meeting. And when I chant the blessings, I tend to like to feel the energy go down through me. So if in any way I can convey vibration, I'll be glad. Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kishanu b'mitzvosav, v'tivanu lehadlikeh shel Hanukkah. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, she'osa nisim lavoseinu, bayomim ha'hem, ba'azman hazeh. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, shehechianu v'kiyamanu v'higianu l'azman hazeh. Amen. Thank you. So, now I'm so excited. I get to welcome Reverend Denis Paul into our sanctuary. The last time, well, let me say it this way. Hanukkah has two kinds of miracles, or maybe I should say the Jewish people talk of two kinds of miracles. There's the supernatural miracles, like that one vial of oil, instead of lasting 1 day, it lasts 8 days. That's supernatural, outside of nature. And then there are the miracles that really come through people's hard work or come within the natural order. And that kind of miracle would be like, say, the winning of the battle in the fight that ended up with the temple being cleaned. And so, the last time I did a full service, it was Memorial Day, and that was the first Sunday after we had learned that Reverend Denis was leaving us. Reverend DL was that saying such similar names. I apologize. That Reverend DL was leaving us, and I remember how sad I was. And now it's 6 months later, and through a lot of work by a lot of people, it feels, for me, it's like a miracle. It's 6 months later, and we have a new spiritual leader, and I'm grateful.
I am so happy to see the top halves of so many beautiful faces. I'm so happy that you're joining us here in the sanctuary. I'm so happy that you're joining us here at home for those of you who are online. It's really, really good to be here. So yes, my name is Denis Letourneau Paul. So my first two initials are DL also a short guy, and DL and I used to have the same color hair before we went gray. There's a lot of similarities. I live in Easton, Massachusetts with my husband, Reverend Joe Cherry, who is the interim minister at our sibling congregation in East Falmouth, Massachusetts. And we share our little dog, Toulouse, who's a very grumpy 14-year-old Papillon, shares his home with us. He's very generous about it. On my way here this morning, normally I'm a very UU person, right? Usually I'm listening to podcasts or books on CD or NPR. And this morning when I got in the car, Casey Kasem's American Top 40 from the fall of 1984 was on. Like, how funny is that, right? So I couldn't change the channel. The thing is that in the fall of 1984, I was in my freshman year at RISD. And it felt like I was going through sort of a storybook of my early adult life. And as I was coming through Providence, U2 came on, Pride in the Name of Love. And it made me think about how when I was a freshman in this art program with people from all over the world, it was so important for us to both assert our individuality and claim this new identity as artists, right? So everybody wore black from head to toe and smoked clove cigarettes and talked about how great U2 was and how terrible Kenny Rogers was. So we were all unique individuals, exactly like everyone else. We were forming an identity. And I think that's a lot of what, Jewish holidays like Hanukkah are about. Forming an identity. That's why at every Hanukkah, the story of the miracle of the oil gets told. I mean, everybody knows it. Everybody knows it by heart, but we tell it because it's important. The story is important. Our stories are markers not just of our past that we share. They're what make us who we are. And they help us be more compassionate and more justice-loving and have a clearer sense of where we can go in the future together and how we can become more ourselves. And that's why in my time with you, I'm going to be spending a lot of time talking about history. I'm kind of a history nerd. But another thing that I'm going to be inviting all of you to do is to share your stories. Your stories about the incidents, the events in your lives that made you who you are, that connected you to something larger than yourselves. I'm going to be asking you to do that, not just in conversations one-to-one, but up here, from the pulpit. I've been doing this with congregations ever since I was an intern in Long Beach, like 150 million years ago. And the thing that I've always noticed is that once in a while I get a compliment or a comment about a sermon. But when somebody is sharing their spiritual reflection during a worship service, boy, are there a lot of comments. People love it. What I know is you all want to hear from each other. And I think this is the root of not just a shared ministry, which I think is really important to all of us, because I'm sure that you don't want any more than I do for me to come in and be kind of a CEO who's going to fix things and tell you what to do. We want to share this thing that we're building together. And the other thing about it is that it's profoundly spiritual. And if what we're planning to do here on Sunday is celebrate that which connects us to something larger than ourselves, we have to share our stories. So I'm really looking forward to hearing from all of you and to getting to know you. And thank you so much for inviting me.
My friends, it is now time for our offertory, and this is a share the plate offertory, so Barbara Beckwith is going to come up and tell us about our partner for the offertory.
Good morning. Today's recipient for Share the Plate is Dorcas International Institute of Rhode Island, which happens to be celebrating their 100th year. You might know Dorcas is an independent, nonprofit human service organization. It empowers immigrants, refugees, and the underserved with housing, healthcare, English training, and job training. In the next few months, 60 to 65 Afghan families will be resettling in Rhode Island. Dorcas will sponsor many of them, and Catholic Services will also be sponsoring them. Currently, the cost of housing is very high, and combined with more than the usual demand for housing, Dorcas is looking to temporarily settle some of these immigrants, refugees, in host families. They're also looking to temporarily settle them in people who have second homes or might have an in-law apartment. And eventually they'll secure permanent housing. And so your contributions today, combined with November's Share the Plate, is earmarked to help the Afghan refugees.
Thank you, Barbara.
So while the plate's going around, a couple little songs. This one is about the dreidel, the sevivon, the dreidel, and it turns and it turns. You might notice that the lyrics kind of turn and turn also. You may notice they are in Hebrew. And you may notice that things get faster and faster. Sevivon, sof, 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 Hanukkah, Offertory, Hanukkah, Offertory, Sevivon, sof, 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 Hanukkah, Eskato hayasham, Eskato hayasham, You can definitely clap, but we're going to go a little bit faster this time. So you're going to be like a boom, clap. Clap. We'll do one more. Al-Hanizim ve'al
Thank you, everyone, for your generosity. We promise to use your offerings wisely and well. Jonathan's music, I noticed I didn't enter that they were in Hebrew, and so Sivivon, which we'll get back to about the Dreidel, and Al Hanisim once again refers to miracles. Doesn't stop. Thinking about spirituality during Hanukkah. So as I was musing about this topic in this service, I mentioned it to a friend, Harry, in Wickford. And he looked at me kind of matter-of-factly, and he said, "Oh, I had one of those experiences. I was standing in Dunkin' Donuts, and there were 2 lines of people. Everyone is waiting, and I'm thinking, what Dunkin' Donut has 2 lines? But that's an aside. And he's looking at the people, and he said, all of a sudden, he felt this great feeling come over him where he felt connected to everyone and that he loved everyone. And then it ebbed away, the feeling. So that was just such a wonderful story and a wonderful way to begin. 3 streams feed into the service. One, as a member of the worship committee, I am always thinking about spirituality. But then again, maybe I'm on the worship committee because I'm always thinking about spirituality. That could be the case. The second stream is Hanukkah. That I wanted to do something celebratory for Hanukkah, but not do a Hanukkah service per se. And the third stream is actually a book that came my way as things come our way. You know, I was listening to a podcast of sorts, and this book was mentioned. It's called The Awakened Brain. It's by Lisa Miller, a psychologist, and it's a wonderful book. And Miller's goal, as she started out as a young clinician, was to help people with mental illness. And later on, and she learned, and I'm going to tell you some of that story, that spiritual input can really affect people's illness. And not only that, that people have resilience to illness depending on their spiritual training and capacity. There's a lot in the book that's wonderful. And later on, because she really is also a scientist, she looked for specific evidence in people's brains and mental processes about different levels of spiritual involvement. I am not talking science, but it's a great book. It's a great book. So I want to share with you how she got on this path. She was working in New York City, a young clinician, and people were treated per usual, therapy, going over what their problems were. Therapy was called CBT, which I don't know what that means. It's cognitive behavioral therapy. I think maybe that's what it is. Yes? Oh, good. And also, you know, medication. And one day, one of the patients, and these are fairly, these are institutionalized people, said, "Hey, Yom Kippur's coming up. What are we going to do about it?" Nothing planned. Lots of Jewish patients, lots of Jewish doctors, New York City, nothing planned. So Lisa Miller decides to hold a service, and 4 people gathered. And as she said, and I'm using the book now, that they arranged the chairs in a circle, and even that was odd. Usually people just kind of stayed away. And then she goes on to talk about this experience. Given how socially withdrawn the 4 were, especially Saul, I wasn't sure to what extent they would participate in the prayers. But when I began the service, all 4 immediately commenced chanting, building into a robust chorus. Jerry, though he never said a word to me about being Jewish, recited whole passages of Hebrew text from memory. Bill tapped his foot along to the prayers, and Rebecca, usually so remote and guarded, leaned forward, her posture open. We conversed about the service as we went, everyone collaborating and gracious, taking turns reading sections in English, interpreting the holiday prayers, sharing insights. The attendants usually called on to restrain patients or enforce rules also seemed absorbed in the fluid rhythm of the prayers. Though they were unfamiliar with the service, their presence and sensitivity added reference. Near the end, we paused the formal service to offer a word about our individual experience of Yom Kippur. Jerry said, "How can you not believe in an all-powerful God of goodness when you look around and see the beauty of the universe?" I was completely stunned to hear such a confident statement of faith from my patient who usually lay in bed trapped in a state of despair and futility. Rebecca was next. "Thank you for the service. I have nothing to say." My turn came. Yom Kippur for me is very important because I make mistakes. I mess up. This is the time when I ask the people in my life forgiveness and then ultimately ask God for forgiveness. Saul turned to me. "God will forgive you," he said. "God always forgives everyone." Again I was stunned. Saul, who feared people to the point of barricading himself in a hotel room, was offering me counsel, extending himself to care for me. And when it was Bill's turn, he confessed, "I'd like to apologize to God for cheating on my diabetic diet." But God knew all along. We laughed. The room felt cleansed and fresh. Those of us around the table felt more connected to one another and to something bigger. But I had no reason to believe that the changed attitudes or atmosphere would carry back to normal life on the ward. And so it's very interesting. Lisa Miller does actually do lots of research, and she and others who've worked to bring spirituality more into clinical psychology, that these feelings and experiences of spirit, of connectedness, of greater than us, actually could be part of the therapeutic protocol, and we're not just delusions or crutches. So it's a great book. I do recommend it. And now I have to find out where I am. So what is spirituality, more and more? Here's from another study of 18 to 27-year-olds who were asked to talk about spiritual experiences. About half of their stories included a time of prayer or an experience at a religious service, often with emphasis on sound, bells, voices in a song or prayer, and on the sensation of barriers between selves and others, or self and the world melting away. Roughly the other half of personal narratives didn't involve prayer or religious worship, but instead included moments of spiritual awareness in nature. And many of you have talked about that as well. So on a beach or a mountaintop or by a pond at a city park. These narratives often included references to light, sky, and a sense of unity between self and environment. And the kids said things like, "You are part of everything around you and it's all a part of you," or "You're linked with the trees, the rocks, the mountains, the sky," or "You're just a speck in the universe, yet the universe is within you." A few of the spiritual narratives didn't involve prayer or nature, but an experience of transcendence felt during a sporting event or while playing music. Again, the emphasis was on the sensation of being absorbed by something larger or going beyond the body and into the music or the cheering crowd. Another aspect of spirituality that Miller talks about and that really comes into my life is synchronicity. When, and some of you may have this, either a dream happens and something shows up or things come your way. Miller gives, I'm watching the time, so I will not go into Miller's very fascinating synchronicities, but I'll tell you, my last synchronicity was in the Friday before last Friday's newsletter with the Chanukah video. No, am I saying it right? Chanukah video, which if you haven't seen the newsletter, it's, what is it, November 26th, whatever that Friday date was. This is a Unitarian ceremony using light to honor what's going on. Yes, it's the November 26th newsletter. And so I just want to say that I might have had an attitude about Chanukah. Oh, it's derivative. Oh, why would you introduce something new? But in fact, the more I learned about Hanukkah, which actually I learned this week because I would thank God for Zoom. I love Zoom. I went to several classes, and learning that Hanukkah, so the events occurred 165 BCE, and then the rabbis wrote about it after, let's say, the 1st century CE of the Common Era, but that the oil was an additional narrative when not battles, but the miraculous nature of God got added. And when also, working with Jonathan, when Jonathan and I put this together, there was such a joy in the familiarity of the shared music and the feelings and stuff. And so how I feel now is how important it is to have rituals and songs and spiritual stuff that elevates us as a community. So I'm delighted to see more and more, especially for the children. I think we live in a pretty crass culture, let me put it that way. And I'm finding more and more that what is solid are these kinds of experience, either personal or collective, that well up within us.
Thank you, Adria. So we've got one more song, again in Hebrew. This song is unbelievably long. We're only going to do half of it. And it's part of the, at least in my household, there is quite a bit of diversity in the Jewish world. But from my knowledge, it's part of what is frequently sung, at least in the Ashkenazic Jewish circles. Like after the blessings and after the lighting of the menorah. It's called Ma'oz Tzur in Hebrew. In English, it's called Rock of Ages. So in this one, I definitely need some clapping from you also. I'm going to ask for something very specific, and I really want you to be unbelievably gentle with yourselves and with each other. If you don't get it, it's fun still. This is all about fun. Let's have a celebration. Don't worry. Be happy, to quote Bobby McFerrin. So here's what I'm going to ask you to do. I'm going to ask you to clap on the 8. I'll give you an example. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Perfect. You already got it. So the way the verse, we're going to do 3 verses. The way the verse works is the first half of the verse, we're going to clap on the 8. The second half of the verse, we're going to stop. And then at the end of the verse, it's going to come back on the 8. I'm going to have my hands going like this. and I'm going to bring you together on the clap. If you don't get it, it's okay. It's fun. It's fun. Let's have fun. Okay. So, Ma'oz tzur Yeshuati Yechana el Shabeach Tikon beit tefilati Esham toda nezabeach Yetachim abeach Mitzor ha'nabeach Az egmor b'shir mizmor Chanukah tamizbeach Ra'ot tzava nafshi V'yagon kochi kila Chayai miraru bekoshi V'shibud malchut egla V'yado habdola Hotzi et haskula Chel paro v'chol zaro Yardu ke'even bimtzula Birkat shoheviani V'gam sham lo shakateti Ivano ges vehiglani Ki zarim avadeti V'yem ra'am asachti Kimat she'avarti Ketz Bavel Zerubbabel Leketz Shivim Noshati. Excellent. Yashikoyach.
Thank you, Jonathan. And the candles are just about out. The shamus is still going. These two are just out. And in Jewish tradition, you never put the candles out, so they have to actually burn. Our timing is excellent. However, let's extinguish our chalice. Please, let's say together, we extinguish this chalice, but not its light. God, we take with us out into the world, sharing it with those we encounter on our journey. And the closing words are from the Dreidel. So the Dreidel is a little top, and it's a gambling game. And so there are 4 letters. Nun, Gimel, He, Shin. Those are the 4 letters. And you can win half, you give money back, you get it all. Depends on what the letter where it lands. I never got into Dreidel. I was always a candle person myself. But, so the closing words are Nes Gadol Haya Sham. And what that means is a great miracle happened there. And so once again, even in a child's game, the reference comes back to the magic of the holiday. In Israel now, the Dreidel says Nes Gadol Haya Po. So they use a different letter. A great miracle happened here. And part of, at least for me, the blessing of being a Jew alive with the state of Israel in existence. It is another one of the miracles. Thank you, everyone. If you feel like standing for our final song, yes, we're singing it in our hearts. Lucky for us, Jonathan is singing the real words. This is the miracle. These are miracles.